Hello YouTube, Bruno Luce here with GLB Productions, back again with another video featuring our old friend, the XLA 1600. Now after my video on how to connect a power amplifier, I of course had many messages from you, my lovely viewers, say, how do we connect a power amplifier in bridge mono mode? And that's just what we're going to talk about today, so stay tuned. So before we learn about bridge mono mode and how to set up the amplifier and connect it, we need to understand bridge mono mode in the context of amplifier modes. In general, modern power amplifiers have two independent channels which are usually referred to as channel A and channel B. Now what's important to understand is that these are identical and they can be deployed in a number of different configurations, including but not limited to left and right. And this is what the modes help us to accomplish. So all power amplifiers can be run in one of three different modes. The simplest and the most straightforward is what is called stereo mode. Now in stereo mode, the input signal to channel A is fed to the output of channel A, and the input signal to channel B is fed to the output of channel B. There is no interaction between the two channels, and the level controls for channel A and B function independently. This is called stereo mode because the most common application for it would be to feed the left signal of your mixer to channel A, which is then used to power the left side of your PA system, and feed the right output of your mixer to channel B, which is then used to power the right side of the PA system. So far so good? Good. Now the next mode which we commonly encounter is referred to as parallel mode. Sometimes this is referred to as parallel mono, but on most amps it will just be called parallel mode. In parallel mode, the input to channel A is also fed to the input of channel B. Once again, in parallel mode, the input to channel A is also fed to the input of channel B. The physical input of channel B is usually not used, and this same signal is then output from channel A and channel B. So you have one input signal which is then fed to both of the output channels. The most common use of parallel mode is where you have a slightly larger system and perhaps you have 4 speakers on each side. So you would use a single amplifier consisting of 2 channels to power one side of your PA system. So you might have one amplifier for your right speakers and another amplifier for your left speakers. So in this case, you would feed the left signal from your mixing console, for example, to the input of channel A. The amplifier would then internally split and route the signal to both channels before outputting that to all of your left speakers. And you can see 2 speakers illustrated here. You could add more through daisy chaining, as is explained in my original amplifier video. So this is parallel mode. The third mode, and the one which we're interested in this video, is referred to as bridge mode. This is also called bridge mono mode. Do not confuse this with parallel mono. They are different. You have bridge mode or bridge mono mode. Now, as you can see, the signal routing on the input side is similar to that in parallel mode. A single input signal connected to channel A is routed to the inputs of both channel A and B. The physical input of channel B is not used. The difference between bridge mode and parallel mode is that the polarity of channel B's output signal is inverted. Now, in order to understand this statement, you need to understand that amplifiers generate power which is then used to move speaker cones, right? And this is referred to as electro-motive force. So the output of the amplifier is connected to the speaker. When the amplifier produces a positive voltage, the speaker cone moves forward, usually, and when the amplifier produces a negative voltage, the amplifier cone moves backwards. So if the positive voltage is analogous to pushing the amplifier cone, and the negative voltage is analogous to pulling the amplifier cone, what you have is two channels working in opposite directions, to use that analogy. So as you can see here, when channel A is producing a positive voltage, as illustrated by the curve going up, channel B is producing a negative voltage, as illustrated by the curve going down. I've drawn the curve in red to make this clear. Similarly, when channel A produces a negative voltage, channel B produces a positive voltage. The net effect of this is that you can connect this two-channel amplifier to a single large loudspeaker, often but not always a subwoofer. And the end result of this is that when channel A pushes, channel B pulls, and when channel A pulls, channel B pushes. So as a result, instead of having a single channel doing all the work, you're now using both channels, in effect combining the two-channel amplifier into one large amplifier channel. And that's why it's called bridge mono. Bridge because the input signal is bridged across both channels, and mono because it effectively acts as a single amplifier channel. Now, there are a couple of important things to understand about bridge mono mode. Firstly, bridge mono gives roughly 3 times the output power into the same impedance as does one of the channels. So to use the amplifier that is in front of us today, the ECLA XLA 1600 does 450 watts into 8 ohms stereo. Into 8 ohms bridged, it does 1520 watts. So you can see that it's actually a bit more than 3 times. Under ideal circumstances, you would get 4 times the power, but there is loss in the power supply and other areas. The other thing, and this is the trade-off, the minimum output impedance is doubled. So if an amplifier normally can operate down to 4 ohms per channel, in bridge mono mode, the amplifier can only operate down to 8 ohms. So you get 3 times the power, but you can only drive double the impedance, okay? And it's very important that when you connect a power amplifier to a loudspeaker, you do your mathematics carefully and check, firstly, that the loudspeaker can handle the power that it's being given, because remember, we're talking thousands of watts here. And secondly, that the amplifier can handle the impedance that it is being connected to. In general, you want to operate into 8 ohms when you are doing bridge mono. Amplifier manufacturers may say 4 ohms fine, but for an extended period of time, our experience has shown this doesn't always work out so well. Now that we understand how bridge mono mode works and what exactly we're doing to the amplifier when we configure it as such, we can look at the mechanics of putting the amplifier into bridge mono mode. To begin with, I need to stress, make sure that the amplifier is off and that all speakers are disconnected when you do the mode switch. Make sure the amplifier is off and that all speakers are disconnected. The actual setting or the actual bridge mono mode switch is usually on the back of the amplifier. As you can see, we're looking at the back of the ECLA here, and it's the bottommost of these 3 switches. It may be a simple switch like this, or it may be a series of dip switches. Some of the QSC amplifiers come to mind. So this switch is recessed deliberately to prevent it being changed accidentally. And as you can see, it's stereo, parallel, and then bridge. So use a small tool to move the switch. In this case, I'm just going to use a screwdriver. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the switch from its bottom position. It's now in parallel, and I'm going to push it once more, and it's now in bridge. Be very sure that when you do this, you really do set it to bridge mono mode, because If you don't, then the results will not be what you expected. Now that you've set the amplifier to bridge mode, it's important to understand that you connect only one source and it is connected to channel 1. Now on this amplifier, the two channels are called 1 and 2. 1 is equivalent to A and 2 is equivalent to B. So you would connect the source to channel 1 or channel A. Again, make sure the amplifier is off when you are doing this. Do not connect anything to the other input. Now we're looking at the output side of the amplifier, where the connections to the loudspeakers are made. So now that you've put the amplifier into bridge mono mode and you've connected your input, it's time to connect your loudspeakers. And this is where you really do need to consult the owner's manual for the amplifier, because every amplifier uses a slightly different protocol for connecting loudspeakers when you are in bridge mode. In general, there are 3 separate methods of doing this. The first is that some amplifiers will have a dedicated bridge mono output. So you can see on this particular amplifier, you've got a channel 1 output, which doubles as the bridge output, and you've got a channel 2 output. Some amplifiers, you will have a third speak-on output, which is labeled bridge or bridge mono output. That is the best situation, and in that case you use all your standard cabling and you simply connect to that output and you're good to go. Unfortunately, most amplifier manufacturers will choose a cost-saving method that makes it necessary to use special cabling. The second most common way in which they do this is they use pins +2 and -2 on the channel 1 or channel A output. So if you look carefully here, you'll see that it says speak on 1, stereo 1 + 1-, bridge 2 + 2-. Now what does this mean? In front of us, we have the back of a Nutric speak-on connector. Now, in order to accomplish this type of amplifier connection, you'll need a speak-on connector that has 4 poles. Some have only 2. This speak-on is wired in the conventional manner. The red cable is connected to +1 and the blue cable is connected to -1. If you were to use this to make a bridge mono connection to this amplifier, you would need to rewire this speak-on such that the red was connected to this terminal, which is the +2 terminal. I think you can see the embossing there. And the blue was connected to this terminal, which is the -2. The other side of the cable would remain standard. And it's very important that you not mix up the 2 ends of the cabling. People always ask me, if I have a speak-on cable that's wired for bridge mono with +2 and -2 on one end, and I reverse that cable, will I damage something? Well, the answer to that depends on how the speaker end is wired. If your speaker is wired conventionally, which is +1 and -1, you'll just get no sound. If you are unlucky and the speaker has the option for biamplification, meaning that the tweeter is connected to +2 and -2, you'll probably damage something. So anytime you rewire a speak-on for bridge mono operation, indicate somehow, write down on the connector, put a label on it so that people know that is wired +2 and -2. You have been warned. Now, the last way, or rather the third most common way of connecting to a bridge mono connection is to use these. Now these are called binding posts. Binding posts used to be the standard way of connecting bare wire to an amplifier before the speak-on connector came along. As you can see, the binding posts correspond to the 2 channels. You have here the positive terminal of channel 1, the negative of channel 1, and the positive and negative terminals of channel 2. When establishing a bridge mono connection, you would take your loudspeaker cabling and you would connect to the two red center binding posts. And the way you would do this is you would connect your red or your positive cable to the binding post of channel 1 and the blue or negative to the binding post of channel 2. And it should look something like that. Remember, channel 1 is acting as the positive side and channel 2 is acting as the negative side. So this is how you would connect using bare wire. The other end would be speak-on wired in the standard configuration or whatever connector your loudspeaker accepts. So that's our video on how to connect a power amplifier in bridge mono mode. I hope that this video was useful. As always, if you have questions or comments, you can get in touch with me via the comment section below, through YouTube messaging, or on my Facebook page. Links to both of those are in the description below. I always love hearing from you, my viewers, so keep those comments and questions coming. Until the next video, thank you very much for watching. God bless you, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.